Welcome back to the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show. Moments away, columnist Theresa Forte. But first, Rise Gardens has the technology to help you grow more and easier and more effective.
Rise Gardens is a revolutionary hydroponic gardening system for your home. Instead of food traveling hundreds or even over 1,000 miles before it hits your plate, harvest veggies, herbs, and greens you need for dinner tonight in the comfort of your home. No green thumb required knowledge. Gardening made easy with Rise Gardens app. Step-by-step guidance from seed to harvest. A complete garden on a shelf and comes with everything you need to grow healthy and the freshest food for you and your loved ones. Fully customize your garden to your needs and preferences. For more information to get your Rise Garden, visit risegardens.com.
Well, Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Theresa Forte is an award-winning writer, photographer, and speaker. She is a garden columnist, photographer, and speaker with a passion for gardens that reflect the changing seasons with grace. Her illustrated column, Your Gardens, now in its 24th year, appears in the Saturday edition of St. Catharines Standard, Niagara Falls Review, and Welland Tribune newspapers, and the Monday edition of the Hamilton Spectator. Welcome to the program, Theresa.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, thank you for taking time and not only educating Holly and myself, but all of our listeners.
My pleasure.
Definitely. So Rebecca was chosen for this year's Perennial of the Year by the National Garden Bureau. Why do you like growing them? Why should others? And do you have any tips on growing them or helpful hints?
Okay. They are just one of my very favorite flowers. I love the colors, and they come in a wide range of colors, lots of yellows, but also some oranges and wine kind of colors. They're easy to grow. They're very showy in the garden. There's some interesting new forms as well. They have a long bloom period, and the perennial types in particular are attractive to birds, which come back and enjoy the seed heads. I leave the dried seed heads in the garden. When they're in bloom, they're attractive to pollinators like butterflies and bees. Let me see what else. They can be divided in the spring or the fall. Some of the rudbeckia are even the more annual type can tend to be perennial, and you can even divide those if they're happily placed. They want to be grown in full sun and well-drained soil. And other than that, they're pretty flexible, I find. That's what I like about them anyway. And there's lots of different types to try. You can grow the seed-grown varieties, and they'll bloom the first year from seed, which a lot of plants won't do that for you. So.
And the perennial ones, I think, aren't they zone 3 to 7? So they've got a quite large range in which. Oh,
they're so hardy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They're very hardy. And it's surprising in my garden, we're in Niagara Falls. I'm located in Niagara Falls, Ontario. And, it's relatively mild here, but, we have some really wet winters, and the seed-grown rudbeckia don't always come back for me. And other years they come back on their own, and I get some interesting mixes of colors that way even. So.
Absolutely.
Highly recommended. Great cut flower as well for bringing inside. They last a long time in the vase.
Well, you talked about birds. People seem to think birds can be harmful to their garden, and maybe in some instances they can. But how can birds be beneficial in the garden, and how can we live in harmony with them to have a garden and get the benefit of what birds can bring to it?
Oh, absolutely. For me, I worked for years to try and attract some birds to our little patch of the world here. It was very bare and open with no trees. And it was, it felt lifeless to me without birds. We started introducing a lot of trees and shrubs. And now more and more I've been adding, when possible, native varieties. So some of the benefits of birds, to me are the song and the color. And it's so interesting to watch their life cycles and their antics as well. This summer we have a little water feature that's made from a wine press, and it's got a spout on the front of it. And the birds decided that they were going to try and learn how to drink and bathe in this little, it's only a few inches wide. And, it was a lot of fun to watch who was brave enough to actually venture into that water, and several of the finches, were the first ones, and just interesting. The other thing, birds eat a lot of bugs. That is a benefit. I know they can, eat all your grapes and other things like that on you, but they also eat a lot of bugs. A single pair of breeding chickadees need 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars in a year just to rear one clutch of young. And that's Doug Tallamy's quote. And I think it's fascinating. If you basically watch the birds, you don't need to have feeders out all the time. You can let them eat all the bugs around your yard, and it's definitely helpful.
Yeah, there's and you see birds, if the habitat is correctly, you see birds that you deem and know, existed. If you're not a birdologist, you don't study birds, just the color
right.
and how they interact with each other.
Exactly. It's a lot of fun to watch. There's a little bit of drama. We've had some issues of nests being raided because we've got a lot of trees around the property now. And so, we get a lot of birds in the springtime and a lot of action. Right now, we've got a red-tailed hawk that's kind of hovering around the yard. And, the birds are coming to the feeder, and then you won't see any birds for 2 or 3 days because, the hawk's around. So, something to keep you busy when the season's off as well, and you can't really get outside just yet.
Right.
Most definitely. So many people may want to grow bulbs but don't have ground to grow in. How can people grow them in their windowsill in their home?
Well, that was a project that I handled this year. I tried, and I've tried to grow bulbs, and get them forced indoors quite a few times and not had very good luck. And so this past year, what I did was I bought bulbs in the fall. You buy them at the same time as the people are going to buy them to put them in their gardens. And you can either refrigerate them. They need a period of cold to come out of dormancy and bloom. So you can either refrigerate them if you have a spare beer fridge, and you can put them in a drawer or something like that and leave them for 8 weeks. Or plant them up in pots, which is what I did, and then wrap the pots in newspaper and bubble wrap and label them. And I put them out in my garage, an unheated garage, up against the wall of the house, so it's a little bit of warmth, and brought them in after 8 weeks. And they bloomed within 2 weeks of coming into the house. So it was really a rewarding project. I used lots of little sticks. I cut some twigs out in the garden, and, you can get sticks around even if you don't have a property, but to kind of hold make sure that the foliage stayed up nice and tall, because when you plant them in a pot, you plant them very close together and basically shoulder to shoulder, they call it. So, a whole bag of bulbs in one pot. And that way you get a really nice show when they do come into flower.
Now, I
think it's a good project.
Whenever you're doing this, is this a one and done, or is there ways to save those bulbs for the next season?
I'm going to say if you don't have somewhere else to grow them, I'll be able to put them, like mine have just finished blooming that I brought in the first week of February. And I brought them out. I've got a little unheated greenhouse, and I've put them out there. And I'll probably, just let them die back and then heal them into the garden, not in the very front of my front garden or something like that, but in the back, and see what comes up. Things like potted daffodils and especially those little miniature ones. Those are really good to, just buy them. You can get them at the grocery store or from your florist, and have those indoors on the windowsill if you haven't started any already. And then they can go out in the garden. But to get them to rebloom in the pot is pretty challenging, actually, because you have to be able to let the foliage die back naturally and feed the bulb, which, in the outdoor garden, that takes until about early June by the time the foliage has really died back. And that's giving all the nutrition into that bulb. So I would say buy them, enjoy them, and get rid of them if you don't have an outdoor garden to keep them in.
Right. What are some new plants that people are growing? That are becoming more popular? What are you seeing on your end there?
I'm finding a lot of the old plants people that, especially younger people that haven't been gardening, they like to see some of, the old favorites that they remember, and maybe newer varieties of those that might be a little more in scale with today's modern properties, like some lilacs or even some roses, things like that. I'm finding there's a revival with dahlias and zinnias, some, like the giants of California. It's like a florist quality zinnia, and they're beautiful to cut and bring in the house and enjoy. And so I'm finding a lot more people are growing both of those, and dahlias as well. The dahlias, of course, you can save the tubers, so it's a little more economical. Zinnias, you can just grow those from seed, really. They're hard to find, the big florist style at the garden centers. And then house plants, especially with the younger people. And we have a young couple next door to us who are not gardeners by any stretch. And I've kind of shared a lot of plants out of my own perennial gardens to get them going in their front yard. And last spring, the young fellow next door, they've got two little youngsters, about 8 years old, that kind of age. And the young fellow came out last spring and said, "My mother's caught your disease." So I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, she has so many plants in the house now." So I thought, well, that's pretty good.
That's a good disease to catch.
So I'm finding a lot of young people. Yeah, it's a good disease to catch, exactly. So, she hasn't spread out all the way out to the sidewalk with the garden yet, but, they're enjoying it. And the kids were growing some sunflowers in the front yard. And, it's nice to see them enjoying it a little bit.
Well, that's
I've got one more. Yeah. I do have one here I wrote down. Last year I grew tomato called Midnight Snack Tomato, and it's just got the greatest name. It's a grape cluster style tomato, and they're black. And we had about 60 or 70 people come through here when I had an open garden, and everybody wanted to know what those tomatoes were. They just thought they were so much fun. And that's something, I think, some of these tomatoes, not a new plant, but, kind of with a bit of a gimmick like that or a little catch, that you're going to remember. People enjoy that, I think.
Well, we really enjoyed having you on the program, Theresa. How can people, just remind our listeners, how can people find out more about you and your great columns?
Okay, so my column is available online. If they Google either my name or go onto the website for the St. Catharines Standard or the Niagara Falls Review or the Welland Tribune, any one of those would have an archive of the columns. They go back many years. It's 24 years now, so there's lots of columns online. I'm on Facebook just with my name, and I do post the columns every week on Facebook as well. And then they could email me if they're interested. And my email is Forte, Forte Gardens, Gardens, @gmail.com. So that is on all the ends of the columns anyway. So,
well, Theresa, we thank you for the information that you've shared with us. You've taught us some things, and we've learned some things, and as well as our listeners, and we thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure. Is it still snowing there? How's your weather?
We're getting close to spring here. We're weeks away.
Here too. Yeah, I know. Counting the days.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay, take care.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.